Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jens Bartholmes. I'm working for the European Commission at the Director General of Energy. And we have a slightly different presentation. There will be presentation examples, very interesting examples from cities that we're working with. But there's also something that I think is very interesting. It's an analysis of how our supported project calls evolved from the outside. So obviously the Commission evolved them because this was a project that ran over 7 years, and in the 7 years the calls have always adapted to new needs and to new developments in the smart cities area. But to see how it has been analyzed from the outside is something that I'm also very interested in, and that Miguel from Cardiff will run us through afterwards. For those who are not familiar with the smart city projects that we are running from the Horizon 2020, the big framework for innovation and research, very short overview. Yeah, something is missing here, but okay. This is supposed to be Europe, and all these wonderful points that we see here are the cities that we're working with. And by now, there are a lot. This is really a critical mass now. Over the last 6 years, we have gathered 17 large demonstration projects that always work in very big consortia of up to 40 and more partners that are consisting of cities, two types, I will come to this very soon, industry, research, and some, let's say, citizen organizations. We have in each of those projects always 2 to 3 lighthouse cities. These are the big cities that are not big cities in the sense of inhabitants, but the ones that are pushing. So they are from everything from 70,000 to the biggest city, which is London. And these 2 to 3 lighthouse cities are getting the main part of the funding. So these projects are very big, co-funded of up to 25 million euros for 5 years from the Commission, plus the investment that come from the cities and from industry. And so now we have these 46 lighthouse cities that are really implementing new innovative solutions. And we have a whole family of fellow cities that are directly learning together with them. So for 5 years, they design the project together, but then it's implemented in the lighthouse cities, and the fellow cities really are there trying to learn on the go, so that once the solutions have been implemented and all the small errors have been smoothed out, they can directly take over and implement the solutions that they need in their own cities. So that is what the whole thing is about. So really getting a European widespread of smart city solutions, so that actually something that might, normally they are composed that something here, and something here, that would be the perfect spread. So it's not that these classes that you see, that these are all just one project. It's really each of those projects is spreading a lot of Europe. These calls have evolved over the time, and we will hear the analysis of this. We have started directly at the beginning of Horizon 2020. That was 6 years ago, and now the last call is still open for those who still want to apply it with a consortium until the 29th or 28th of January next year. The whole thing will then be almost 500 million of funding, so really big, and the last projects will actually run until 2025. So we started 2014 up to 25, so almost a decade of this smart city and community projects, a wealth of solutions that have been tested, more than 500 so far. And what we are doing is obviously we are working together, so these are not parallel projects, but they're working now all together. All these cities, all these industries involved, research, SMEs, they are really gathering, and they are trying to make it accessible also for everybody else. So meaning solutions are packaged, solutions are first analyzed what is common, what is very specific to a city, and what can be transported, because this is about replication, what can be transported easily and what has to be adapted to make it work also in your city. And with this, I hand over to Miguel. Afterwards, we will also have some of those cities telling you on how it worked in their cities, so some very interesting examples. But first, the analysis of the evolution over these 7 years that Miguel will do for you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Jens. And well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to this session in which, well, when we were thinking, you've seen, and Jens has mentioned, that we are now a big family of projects, and we have, well, we started actually from the very beginning collaborating and identifying common points, and in order to share the knowledge that we were generating, and well, in order to improve somehow the ecosystem that we had within our projects. When thinking about which lessons we could share and which experiences we could share during this big event, we thought that it was maybe worth making like a kind of analysis of the evolution of the different calls and the different ways in which the Commission has been supporting this well, field of smart cities and these paths that cities are taking in order to transform their ecosystems into smarter places. So I'll try to show you how this evolution has been during well, all the years in which well, the Commission has been somehow fostering the implementation of this sort of projects and creating somehow this, well, this big ecosystem of partners working together in order to improve our cities all over Europe. And it started actually within well, the previous framework program, within the 7th framework program, where the Commission already started to talk about smart cities and implemented somehow this smart city concept in some of the projects they were funding and proposing. This started with, well, in collaboration and also extracting somehow and collaborating with the lessons learned in other sort of projects, for example, about energy efficient buildings, and also in other different calls in which knowledge was being generated in order to be somehow well replicated and implemented at a different scale. And then, since then, we started with, well, the Commission started with the Horizon 2020 program, where the field of smart cities has had a really big role, and where there has been, well, a big support from the Commission in order to generate this big family of projects in which we are working now to demonstrate how technologies and how solutions work, not only from the technology perspective, but also, and especially, I would say, from the economic and the societal perspective in order to be replicated in other areas. So I would like to show you this evolution and this analysis that we have carried out from Cartif. I would like to mention that from Cartif we've been really active in this field of smart cities, and here you can see, well, the whole family of projects, not only in Horizon 2020, but also under the FP7 program, where those that are marked with the black box are those in which we from Cartif are collaborating. Some of them coordinated, those that have the full black square, and those with the dot in which we are collaborating as partners. So we have a kind of good knowledge on how this evolution has been, and we wanted to bring somehow these, well, lessons and these experiences to this audience that we have here in order to, well, to show you how this has evolved over the time. I'll start very briefly with what happened under the FP7 program with projects that have already ended and that demonstrated large interventions at district scale, where we had well, the objective and the challenge to retrofit groups of buildings, mainly residential in most of the cases, in order to demonstrate how solutions can be implemented in order to reduce the energy consumption and to make life better for the people using these buildings. So there were, well, some groups of buildings funded by the Commission, where the support was mainly in order to foster and to create pilots in cities that could then be replicated through other different projects and creating like new business models that could support this replication. Then the program changed and we entered into the Horizon 2020, and then the first projects from the family came, for example, Urban, that is the one I'm coordinating, where the challenge was a bit different. In that case, the Commission was asking not only to retrofit buildings and to implement energy efficient measures, but also to combine this with measures at other scales and in other fields, as for example, sustainable mobility or information and communication technologies, in order to foster or to create new services for citizens. There, the approach was a bit different. We had to work on a kind of integrated manner and combining and somehow working on the convergence area of these three fields of energy, mobility, and ICTs. And we had the lessons that we had already learned in previous projects demonstrating these actions in the field of energy at district scale. So we had already the advantage to somehow replicate some of these technologies and these solutions, now considering different business models and different financing schemes in order to implement these retrofitting activities. This is just one example, that is remote urban, and some of the actions that we have implemented in the city of Valladolid, where we have retrofitted 400 dwellings, and we have completely retrofitted the district heating network, implementing renewable energy sources, and improving the comfort conditions for the people in to a really high level. Then, understanding how these projects had worked, there was a kind of new step in this evolution of the smart cities projects. And then the Commission somehow started with a new wave of projects in which they were asking for the projects to have own business models in order to implement the solutions that has already been demonstrated, and to go only for to add innovations that were those somehow fostered by the Commission and financed by the Commission. So there was a need to investigate on new business models in order to somehow cover part of or to replicate technologies that had already been demonstrated. And in this sense, new business models appeared and were implemented and are already being implemented in some of these projects. For example, crowdsourcing models in order to implement actions in these fields of energy, mobility, and ICTs. Other kind of schemes, as for example, renting parts of the building, for example, the roofs, in order to implement renewable energy sources that can be exploited by others, or other kind of schemes that we know, but we were testing on a kind of different ways. For example, energy performance contracting, or other kind of programs and initiatives, as for example, aggregating demand through energy communities. So all these business models are now being tested as part of this seed that was created in previous projects in order to continue evolving and to continue demonstrating how this can be replicated in other areas and in other cities. And then there was a new step, and it's actually the step in which we are now, with the third wave of calls for smart cities projects by the Commission, with 3 calls in which, well, 2 of them have already been started, the projects that were funded under these calls, and then the third one, as Jens was mentioning, will be closed next year, where the concept has changed slightly, and or maybe not slightly, but they have requested, and the challenge now is to go for positive energy districts. So we have somehow continued our path in which we started with very efficient buildings, with low energy buildings, then changing the scale to districts, to nearly zero energy districts. So now the challenge is to go for positive energy blocks. And that means to have a positive energy balance, considering the annual balance of the district, considering the different elements that have to be integrated for this purpose. So for this we need very efficient buildings, and this is something that we have already demonstrated in previous projects. We need supply from renewable energy sources, even locally or regionally. This is something that has to be integrated, and we need also to integrate elements related to flexibility of the demand, in order to, well, to be able to couple the production with the demand and to have this positive energy balance and this surplus of energy that can be served. So we are now in this challenge, and we are now, the first projects of this third wave have started, and they are now working on demonstrating how this concept can be implemented and how can we move from this nearly zero energy district to these positive energy districts, where we can, exchange and share this surplus of energy that we are producing. For this, obviously, new elements have to be added to the equation, and we have to consider how are we sharing the energy, which are the technologies that we have to implement in order to ensure this positive energy balance, and especially how people is interacting with buildings and with energy in order to ensure that we are able to have this balance. So we are facing new challenges, we are facing new thinking ways, and we are demonstrating new solutions. And we have seen how this has been evolving in all these years in which we have had these different demonstration projects to reach this this concept that we have now that is about these positive energy blocks. So we have seen how the projects have evolved from a specific way of thinking to a kind of a long-term thinking in order to plan, well, with a long-term vision, how this can be implemented and replicated in cities. We have seen how the technical challenge has also evolved and how it has been, well, modified in order to be more ambitious in terms of the actions that we were implementing. We've seen also that there are new business models that are required in order to implement these, well, pilot projects successfully. And we've seen that there are also new barriers, and especially on the non-technical perspective, I mean regulatory or societal barriers that we have to overcome, especially on this topic of positive energy district. And we have seen also how along these different and across these different calls, the role of the follower cities has also been evolving from a kind of observer or more observer perspective in the first projects to a kind of a more active role in the latest projects where they have to, well, deliver long-term plans for their cities and sound replicability strategies in order to replicate what is being done on the Lighthouse cities. So this is a kind of, well, very short overview of this evolution that we have seen and then we have had. And now we have a very interesting panel where we have representatives from, well, different cities that belong to these different calls who can share their impressions and their views on how they've been involved and the challenges that they are facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to, when you stay here, no? Yeah. I'd like to invite to the stage Mihai from Limerick, and we have Roope from Helsinki, and Jiri from Pisek, and we have also funny Nathan from Greater London Authority. And they will actually try to illustrate this rather abstract, very fast, very deep, but good analysis with some more down-to-earth examples. So who would like to start then? What is the...
No, it's, yeah, you can start with the questions.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Now it's black.
Yeah, that was for the...
Okay. We will very soon see something there.
Start with the questions.
Okay. While we are still waiting on the presentation, do you want to start, Nathan, with your examples? Wait.
Just to check, you want to talk about the near energy district stuff there. So in Sharing Cities, we're one of the older projects, and we're about to end in the next year or so. So we weren't working towards positive energy districts. We were working to create as near energy districts as we possibly could. Some of the things that we've worked on where we've had some really great results in Sharing Cities so far, and obviously we're in the last year, so some of these results are still coming in, are around how we've retrofitted our buildings. We've retrofitted our buildings across the cities of London, Milan and Lisbon with a whole range of different smart technologies plus standard energy efficiency measures as well. And some of the results that we're getting back from that at the moment are 50 to 60% energy savings. On top of that, we've got our sustainable energy management system, which is something that we're really, really proud of. And that's effectively an algorithm that manages the inputs and outputs of all of the different energy systems in the buildings that we've retrofitted, including the renewable energy inputs and the various building energy management systems. And it's optimizing the energy use across all of those different areas at a district level. And we're seeing around about a further 10% energy reduction on top of the retrofitted buildings. So we're starting to see some really positive results. It wasn't a very expensive system to design and implement, so we're really happy with that. And we're already starting to see quite a lot of interest from other London boroughs, across other cities in Italy and Portugal to replicate what we've got.
Great. So that is actually something that you mentioned there. These projects are very much about replication. We do not want simply to try it out in one city, but as I mentioned before, it's really about analyzing what can then be transported from one place, most probably first of all in the same city, because we're always talking about districts. In the case of London, about boroughs, and there are another 31 boroughs.
33.
33. And actually, they are now kind of, there's a peer pressure. So it works in one part of the town, and now everybody's waking up and saying, oh, great, can't let those guys just be the front runners. And actually, this kind of peer pressure is very positive, because then it starts spreading in the city, and from there on, it's easier to actually replicate it also in other cities. So now from Helsinki, we would like to hear a little bit, you're one of the newer calls, newer projects. You already had the focus very much on positive energy districts in that. So from one of the first, Nathan, now to Helsinki, how did you actually, I mean, Helsinki is already very far advanced. You obviously have good isolated buildings and everything. What did you do to actually go towards positive energy buildings?
Hello everyone, I'm Roope. I'm representing my Smart Life Helsinki project here. And basically, first of all, I would like to mention a small detail about the business model approach. In Helsinki, we have strongly focused the involvement of multiple business partners. So there's city and business partners, small companies and also energy companies and research partners. So there's a broad collaboration to start with. And the way we have been proceeding to push forward this energy smart district idea is, I can give you two examples. We have this new residential area called Kalasatama, in which there is a smart district project going on. And in this project, we gather as much as information as we can, and we apply co-creative development and also integrate renewable energy systems and waste heat utilization and smart demand response systems. So it's a totally new area in which the innovative technologies have been already integrated into buildings from the start, and there are smart home solutions in every apartment. So this is a very late development. But also we are working on retrofitting activities with the same collaborative partners. So we have kind of twofold approach. It's totally new area and focus on new old buildings also.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. And obviously they are not just, I'm just diving into some other sectors. No, it's not just the technical approach that obviously has to be solved, but there are so many other non-technical aspects that you have to focus, and I'm now talking to the city of Limerick in this case, that you had to focus on to make it work, to make it sustainable, to bring in actually the citizen not just as somebody that you just dump on solutions, but that is part of the solutions. Can you tell us a little bit how you solve this in your project?
Of course. Good afternoon. My name is Mihai Bilauka. I'm the Lighthouse coordinator for the city of Limerick in Ireland. We work closely with the city of Trondheim in Norway to develop positive energy districts. And creating these positive energy districts is not a simple challenge. In fact, it's a series of challenges that we need to address. We knew right from the beginning that this is not something that we need to solve from a technology point of view, but also from a behavioral change point of view. And it is really about behavior change. That's where the trick, that's where the difficulty lies. So from a technology point of view, we are looking at obviously improving the efficiency of our buildings in the positive energy district that we've chosen. And this is again not trivial, because we are dealing with a historical city that has protected buildings, has Georgian buildings, and they are under a particular type of conservation that we need to be able to protect and address when we look at retrofitting. We are looking obviously at deployment of renewable energy sources, and we have a flagship project that will see a tidal turbine being deployed in the river that goes through the city center, and obviously enabling people to transact energy between themselves as part of a community utility company. But in order to make sure that people are with us and they work with us as part of this project, we are doing two main things. First of all, we have established a citizen observatory, a place where citizens can come, understand how they can measure energy consumption. They can understand what solutions they can deploy, and they can share ideas, and they can share thoughts, and they can co-create solutions for the way they manage energy. This idea of participation and co-creation of services, it's very powerful. We have already been running two events where people can share ideas about energy monitoring. But it's not just about engaging the people and engaging the community. It's also about setting up the vision for the city. It's setting up a vision for a sustainable community in Limerick and also in Trondheim in Norway. And that process has to be enabled not just as part of the project of what we do, it has to be enabled as part of what the city does in the future. We are making that vision for Limerick part of our formal city and county development plan. So people understand that whatever we do in this project, in fact, will be sustainable going forward as part of the overall development of the community. Another important aspect of what we do is data modeling and city data modeling in order to be able to explain to people what is the current position, what is the current understanding that they have about energy consumption, and what kind of changes in behavior will lead towards a positive energy behavior.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we come to Yuri. You are from the perspective of a fellow city. So all what these guys are implementing, you are very interested in. But so now just tell us, how do you go about? You have most probably some of the solutions have been already defined together with the Lighthouse cities. You already flagged your interest. How do you transform what you see there in the other cities and bring it into your city?
Good afternoon. My name is Jiří Tensar. I'm from city of Písek, which is in the Czech Republic. We are a fellow city of Plus City Exchange, where Limerick and Trondheim are the lighthouse cities. And we have a quite busy communication. We do a lot of observation. For the technical side, I think that every city is very specific. So that's, for us, it's to have a great partners who can help us. But for example, from the last meeting in Limerick, which was a few weeks ago, I must say this, English-speaking countries are very good with talking to their people, to the inhabitants. And we got a lot of inspiration from, as Mihai said, this laboratory where the people can come and see. So I got a lot of inspiration. I'm trying to maybe do something like that because this where we are not that good. So this social interaction I see as a very important. And also from another technology partner, we got some idea to foster even more the people, how to try to kind of suck them into this project. So far we've been mostly working with our municipal buildings, so we have easily can operate them. But through this interaction, we hope that we get on board even some private sector. And also we do a little bit of our own way with the social interaction. So our vision was to focus on the kids in the primary schools, and that could be the effect that they can influence their parents. So for example, we're just now running a competition in all primary schools in Písek, where there are two tasks. The one is regarding the quality of internal microclimate. So the kids got CO2 sensors, and they have a task to keep the CO2 below the 1000 ppm. And the second task is to bring some idea on the energy conservation for their school. And in a few weeks we have the final, and I believe we will attract quite large crowds to come, because the parents would like to see the kids to present and be proud of the kids. So we also try to do this interaction kind of our way.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we passed from technical to replication. Now there's one thing, it doesn't always work as you write something in a central place like Brussels, you call, and then you just realize actually the rules are not exactly implemented everywhere the same. So are there any barriers to turning your district into positive energy district. For instance, in Spain, we heard that actually it's the law that makes things rather difficult, not the technology here.
Well, I'll sit here. Well, actually, there are, as I have said during the presentation, and I think it's been already mentioned, this concept about positive energy blocks is mainly, or well, depends a lot on the non-technical side more than on the technical side. At the end, from the technology perspective, we have, well, like the technologies, the solutions. We have, obviously, there is still room for innovation, but we have the systems to produce, and we have the technologies to reduce the demand and to increase the comfort conditions and so on. But from the non-technology perspective, there are obviously, well, big elements that have to be solved and with which we have to work in order to ensure that this concept works. And regulation is one of the elements. And for example, here in Spain, there are some barriers that are mainly related to the regulation existing to the way in which renewable energy sources are used and how can we, use energy locally and also serve this energy, or how to serve this surplus of energy that we have. You know that we had a kind of, very strict regulation till beginning of this year. Now the regulation has changed, but even though the regulation has changed, there is still a bit of uncertainty on how it will work, and there is still a bit of, reluctancy from the sector on, for example, implement solutions for self-consumption when it comes, for example, from PVs. In our case, in Remourban, even not being a positive energy district, but a nearly zero energy district, we implemented a solution of photovoltaics for electricity production, and at that moment we had to decide to use this electricity not for electricity consumption, but for a thermal production for the district heating, because the regulation was so strict at that moment, and the business model was not good for the users of the building, so that we had to go for this alternative in order to overcome the existing barrier. Obviously, this is not the most efficient way to use that energy, but it was the way that was more that had the highest benefit for the citizens or for the dwelling owners in terms of the business model. So there is still a lot of work to be done. I think that these pilot projects can demonstrate how things can work in a different manner, and there are a lot of recommendations that we can give also to the regulatory framework in order to improve the boundary conditions, in order to somehow be able to adopt and to adapt this concept to our country and different regions.
Yeah, thank you. So there's not just the journey, again, from the technical, from nearly zero to positive. There's also the journey from having a certain rule set and maneuvering around towards through technology and through business models. So business models is actually something that we saw also in the analysis before, was also part of the journey, because business models in the first year were mentioned, but actually then we could not dream, and there we come back to the dreaming, that all these projects would naturally work together. And so they created this big critical mass together, and they're now working together. And one of the things they're trying to figure out is actually how business models can be set up that they can deal with the current rules, with the current technology, with the current way of behavior of people, but business models to make also the journey from something that was just grant funded, and that is actually something that happened 10 years ago. This kind of big projects were funded, and after 5 years they finished and just look for the next grant and the next funding. So now obviously this is much bigger than that, so we're looking for the sustainability beyond the project lifetime, because obviously we can just give a seed funding, even if it's close to €500 million, but from then the next important step is in this journey to make them bankable projects, to make them financially viable projects. And so maybe after 5 years of experience, I hand over to Nathan to tell us what happened in London.
So I think this is a really important part of the stage that we're at in the last year. We want to really make sure that the technology that we've tested is scaled up. So in London, the borough that has been testing this technology is Greenwich, and we're working very closely with them now to capture the business models. As you say, the business models we found are really strong. I mean, I've already told you about the main examples in terms of the retrofit. We're seeing around 50 to 60% reduction in energy costs. There's your business model right there. If you want to look at a return on investment over 10 or 15 years. If you add in sustainable energy management system on that, that's a further 10%. So for a city officer, you can really start to see what the return on investment is. You can start to plan that into the way that you're going to regenerate your housing estates or build new estates from scratch. So what we're trying to do at the moment is for a process called packaging, is capture all of the information from the measures that we've implemented, not just business models, but how we finance them, the technical specifications, how they worked, the monitoring information as well, the tender and procurement information. And then we're sharing that with initially the other 32 London boroughs, but also anybody in the UK and across Europe who wants to learn from us. To try and bring a bit of confidence to the market, try and bring a bit of confidence to how people procure this technology. And obviously business model is a really, really important part of that. And one of the really interesting business models we've got that's come out of the Sharing Cities project, we did a retrofit of Lisbon City Hall. And it was an incredibly expensive retrofit. It's probably as a grade A retrofit as you can possibly get. We had to work with Baroque paintings in the City Hall. It's a World Heritage site, so we had to make sure that we were very, very sentimental to the building. And we were putting everything on there like solar panels and new insulation and new windows. And the business model from that is really interesting in terms of other cities who want to retrofit their heritage sites or their historically important buildings. So we've got some incredible learning there, which has already garnered interest from cities in China, cities across Europe, that we can share the business models from that. So we're currently in that process of gathering that information, and we'll be sharing it over the next year.
Okay, thank you very much. Mihai, in Limerick, you have one of the newer projects, and this morning from NTNU we heard others saying that business models was already very much factored in from the beginning. So what would be a business model where you say, we didn't try this before, that is really something that we think works for these positive energy blocks?
We are quite at the beginning of the journey, so we have a lot more to learn. I'd like to learn from London and other cities that have went through that process, and from our partners, Officina Verde, and other partners that are more expert in the area of business models. We are considering a number of investment models, such as ESCOs, the energy service companies that will provide the necessary funding for building owners to invest in their properties, and then they will pay back from the energy savings that are being generated. But we're also looking at strategic investment funds on a commercial basis, and this is a very important element. The business model has to be scalable, it has to be commercially viable in order to be sustainable, and in order to be able to be deployed across other cities in Europe. Obviously, we are looking at the creation of an utility, a community energy utility company that will allow people to buy and sell energy and credits for energy as an alternative to sustain this type of activity. But we're at the beginning of this journey. We are going to study these models, and we always need to keep in mind replications. We are working closely with PSEC and other 4 cities, Alba Iulia in Romania, with Voru in Estonia, with Sestao Beri in Spain, and with Smolyan in Bulgaria. So we have to make sure that whatever solutions we look at from a financial investment point of view are replicable and they are sustainable. I think the commercial element of this type of interventions is very important. There has to be a return on investment. It's not about free money. It's about doing things the right way.
Okay, so in a city like Pisek, obviously you have also the possibility to use regional funds. And apart from the grants that are now in the projects, how do you go about? How do you do this blending of funds? How do you try to get other European money into this project to bring this forward?
So As a fellow city, we are a little bit unfortunate that the big money go to the lighthouse cities. We just pay ourselves, but that's fine. But we're looking actually where to get the money for what we kind of create on a paper at first. So we have possibilities of using national money. There is some now kind of, how to say, process among the ministries in the Czech Republic to make this better working. Obviously, the European grants we can use and we used to use. We have a great experience with EPC in PSEC. We are one of the first Czech cities actually who use it in fairly larger scale. And at the moment, I already told my colleagues, there is the great interest from the European Investment Bank to create some investment platform for financing the smart cities in the Czech Republic. So I don't have the answer to this yet, but there are several possibilities opening right now in front of us. So we are kind of researching all these possibilities, especially the ones we don't know, like the European Investment Bank.
Okay. Okay.
Just to add a small, just a little bit of the information on what I said previously, I believe that if the commercial model is developed right, I don't think there will be massive difficulties in securing funding. We have been in touch, for example, with the Irish Strategic Investment Fund, who are a government body that is investing in projects that are commercially viable but require additional support. It's a way of de-risking the investment.
Yeah.
In a similar way, there are other banks that provide such level of this type of investment in green infrastructure.
Okay, super. Robert, in Helsinki, what would be one of the business models you would like to underline as being something that's really a game changer for you?
Yes, thank you. Based on our project idea, we kind of have three basic rules. We have integrated city planning, citizen engagement, and involvement as many as possible business partners. And we have done that. We have involved small and medium-sized enterprises, large energy companies, and bring all these actors together, and also research organizations. So we have a kind of broad-based collaboration to act basis as actions on. And I think this has been a successful idea since the SMEs, for example, in this one retrofitting destination, they have created a new technology called smart thermostats, and all other actors are using the same technology to carry out improvement. For example, the energy company, the research organization, so they have a joint technology that all actors can use and create added value based on that same technology. And I think that is a good example of good collaboration and trust among the project partners. And of course, like mentioned here, I need to stress the importance of political and legal support. The business solutions are not enough as such. We need also the support in enabling framework. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have 3 minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience that you want to pose to the 5 panel members? Can I have the... Anyone? Okay. You can still think. Okay, at this moment we're at the end of the session, and I would like to thank my panelists for great insight, and thank you very much.